You're not addicted to the person. You're addicted to the almost. You know the feeling. And if you are watching this, you have probably had the conversation with yourself. The final one, the definitive one. The one where you sat alone, maybe at 2 a.m, maybe staring at your phone or your ceiling, and you made the list. Not a written list necessarily, but the one in your head. The one that cataloged every single reason this person was not good for you. You remembered the times they made you feel invisible. The moments where their words landed like something designed specifically to find the softest part of you and press there, hard. You remembered the nights you lay awake trying to decode what you had done wrong, only to realize again, always again, that you had done nothing wrong. That the problem was not a puzzle you could solve, because the problem was not yours to solve. You had that conversation. Maybe you had it 10 times. Maybe 20. Maybe you had it with a friend who held your hand and said, "Finally, you're done with this," and you nodded and you meant it. You were more sure of it than you had been of almost anything in recent memory. And then something happened. A message. A phone call. A song that came on while you were driving. You passed a restaurant where you used to sit across from them and laugh about something you cannot even remember now. And something shifted, not in your mind, not in the rational, reasoning part of you that made those lists and had those conversations, but somewhere older, somewhere deeper, somewhere that operates before language gets a chance to intervene. And before you fully understood what was happening, before your carefully constructed arguments could organize themselves into a defense, you were back. Not because you forgot everything. You did not forget. Every memory was still there, perfectly intact, available for your inspection. You went back while knowing, while remembering. And that is the part that haunts people the most. Not just that they returned, but that they returned with full awareness, as if some part of them simply overrode the rest. People call this weakness. They call it self-destruction. They call it an addiction to drama, an attraction to chaos, an inability to love what is good for you. Friends shake their heads. Family members offer the same advice with declining patience. And somewhere inside you, a quiet but persistent voice wonders if they are right. Wonders if there is something fundamentally broken in the architecture of who you are. There is not. What happened to you has a name, a mechanism, a neuroscientific explanation so precise and so well documented that it should be taught in schools, not as a curiosity, but as a survival skill. Because what pulled you back was not weakness. It was not stupidity. It was not some tragic flaw in your character that only you possess. What pulled you back was one of the oldest and most powerful forces in the entire mammalian nervous system. And nobody told you it was happening. But here is what nobody tells you, and what most conversations about toxic relationships entirely miss. It is not love that creates this pull. It is not even attachment in the way we normally use that word. What creates this force, what makes walking away feel physically impossible even when your mind knows it is the right thing to do, is a neurological mechanism so fundamental to how your brain operates that scientists first discovered it not in humans, not in studies of romantic love, but in a rat pressing a lever in a box. And what they found in that box explained everything. In the 1950s, a behavioral psychologist named B.F. Skinner was conducting experiments on learning and reward. He had built a simple apparatus, later called the Skinner box, in which a rat could press a lever and receive a food pellet. He was mapping the relationship between behavior and reward. The science was clean and logical. Rat presses lever, rat gets food. Rat learns to press lever more. Reinforcement. Simple enough. Then Skinner made a small adjustment. Instead of delivering a pellet every single time the lever was pressed, he made the delivery unpredictable. Sometimes the lever worked. Sometimes it did not. There was no pattern the rat could decode, no sequence it could memorize. The reward became intermittent, random, beyond any ability to anticipate or predict. He expected the behavior to decrease. Uncertainty, he assumed, would be discouraging. What happened instead stopped his research team cold. The rat became obsessive. It stopped sleeping. It stopped engaging with anything else in its environment. It pressed the lever compulsively, not more than before, but orders of magnitude more. Hundreds of additional presses per hour. It pressed when it was full. It pressed when it was exhausted. It pressed, in the most disturbing cases, until its paws bled, and it still did not stop. The random reward did not make the lever less motivating. It made the lever the only thing in the world that mattered. Skinner called this intermittent reinforcement, and it became one of the most replicated findings in the entire history of behavioral science. It is the principle behind every slot machine ever built. It is why social media platforms are engineered to deliver unpredictable notifications rather than predictable ones. It is why gambling is more neurologically compelling than almost any other activity a human being can engage in, despite, or rather because of, its fundamental uncertainty. And it is, with devastating precision, what is happening inside your brain when you are in a relationship with someone who is sometimes warm and sometimes cold, sometimes loving and sometimes withholding, sometimes present and sometimes absent in ways that follow no pattern you can ever fully predict. You are the rat. They are the lever. And your brain, doing exactly what it was built to do, has assigned this the highest possible priority in your entire cognitive and emotional system. To understand why, we need to go one level deeper into the actual neurochemistry of what is happening inside you during these cycles. Dopamine is a word that gets used a lot, usually incorrectly. Most people think of it as the pleasure chemical, the thing your brain releases when something good happens. But this is not quite right, and the distinction matters enormously for understanding everything we are talking about here. A neuroscientist named Wolfram Schultz spent decades mapping dopamine responses in the brain with extraordinary precision. What he discovered fundamentally changed the scientific understanding of motivation, reward, and addiction. Schultz found that dopamine does not primarily spike in response to a reward. It spikes in anticipation of an uncertain reward. When an outcome is guaranteed, when you know for certain that pressing the lever will produce the pellet, the dopamine response is moderate, predictable, and relatively modest. Your brain processes the certainty, files it accordingly, and moves on. But when the outcome is uncertain, when the pellet might come, when there is a real chance of something wonderful, but you cannot know for sure, dopamine floods the system at levels that dwarf anything a predictable reward can produce. Your brain, in other words, was not designed for contentment. It was designed for the hunt. Evolution built your ancestors to be relentlessly motivated, relentlessly searching, relentlessly attentive to opportunities in an uncertain and dangerous world. A brain that felt satisfied and calm would not have survived. A brain that was perpetually energized by possibility, by the almost, the maybe, the not yet, had an overwhelming survival advantage. So that brain got passed down, generation after generation, until it became your brain, running ancient software in a world it was never designed to navigate. And a toxic relationship is, neurologically speaking, the most sophisticated simulation of that ancient hunting environment your modern life is likely to produce. Think about what it actually felt like in those cycles. You never knew which version of this person you were going to encounter. Would today be the day they were warm, funny, present, the version you fell in love with, the one who made you feel like the most important person in any room? Or would it be the other version, the cold one, the distant one, the one who looked at you as though you were a mild inconvenience, the one whose silence felt like a punishment for a crime you never committed? You could not predict it. You could not control it. You could not solve it, and God knows you tried. You tried reading the signs, adjusting your behavior, becoming more agreeable or less demanding or more affectionate or more independent, running experiment after experiment to find the formula that would produce the warm version reliably, consistently on demand. But there was no formula, because there was no pattern. And that unpredictability, that maddeningly, exhaustingly, heartbreakingly total absence of predictability, was doing something specific to your dopamine system. Every interaction became charged with possibility. Every message was scanned not just for its content, but for its tone, its implications, the emotional weather it suggested. Every moment of warmth landed with disproportionate impact, because you had been waiting for it, watching for it, half convinced it might not come. And when it came, when they turned toward you with the warmth and presence you had been starving for, the neurological response was not just pleasure. It was an explosion of relief and reward and validation and excitement, all fused into a single neurochemical event so powerful that your brain began to encode this person as the source of something it could not replicate anywhere else. Not love, neurological significance. But the story does not end with dopamine. Because what Helen Fisher discovered at Rutgers University added a dimension to this picture that should change the way we talk about breakups, returns, and the experience of romantic loss entirely. Fisher placed people who had recently been through painful breakups, specifically people who described themselves as still desperately in love with the person who had left them, into an fMRI scanner. She showed them photographs, neutral images, and then photographs of their ex-partners. She expected to see the brain regions associated with emotional pain light up. She found those too. The anterior cingulate cortex, the region associated with the physical and emotional experience of pain, was active. But that was not the finding that changed everything. What changed everything was that simultaneously, at the same moment in the same brain, in these ordinary people who just missed someone they loved, the ventral tegmental area and the caudate nucleus were lighting up with activity. These are the same structures, the exact same regions, the same patterns of activation seen in people who are addicted to cocaine when they are shown cocaine-related stimuli. Fisher's conclusion was not that love is like an addiction in some poetic, metaphorical sense. Her conclusion was that romantic rejection, specifically rejection involving an unpredictable or inconsistent partner, activates the neurological hardware of addiction. Not a similar system, not an analogous system, the same system, the restlessness you feel when you have not heard from them, the intrusive thoughts that interrupt concentration, that show up uninvited at every quiet moment, the physical ache, the one that does not feel emotional so much as it feels almost bodily, as though something has been taken from your chest and left a space there that the air moves through wrong. These are not melodrama. These are not weakness. These are the documented, reproducible symptoms of a neurological system in deficit, reaching for the source of what it has been conditioned to need. You are not missing a person in these moments. You are in withdrawal. In addiction medicine, there is a phenomenon called cue-induced craving. It works like this. A person in recovery encounters something associated with what they have left behind. A smell, a sound, a particular street, sometimes just a time of night. And something in them surges, not a thought, not a decision, but a physiological wave that temporarily overwhelms every intention they had carefully built. The cue does not satisfy the craving. It amplifies it. It tells the nervous system. The source is near. Everything else can wait. Your nervous system has spent months, maybe years, building an elaborate library of these cues. Their name appearing on your screen. The sound of a notification that might be from them. A restaurant you used to go to. A song that played during one of the good nights. Any of these, encountered in an unguarded moment, does not activate your reasons to stay away. It bypasses them entirely. It triggers something older, faster, and far more urgent. The part of your brain that has been conditioned to treat this specific stimulus as the most significant thing in your environment. When that cue appears, your prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for rational evaluation, long-term planning, impulse regulation, loses ground to your limbic system. Not because you're not intelligent enough, not because your resolutions were not genuine, but because the limbic system is faster, louder, and evolution specifically built it to override higher-order thinking when it detects something it has been trained to prioritize. You are not making a bad decision in these moments. You are having a neurological experience that temporarily exceeds your capacity for decision-making. Those are not the same thing, and the difference matters more than most people realize. Imagine a sailor. No GPS months at sea. Exhausted. And then a lighthouse. But it flashes with no pattern. Once. Long silence. Twice quickly. Nothing. A slow sweep. 3 short bursts. He cannot decode it. Cannot look away. He charts every flash. Neglects sleep. Neglects his crew. Because somewhere in that erratic sequence might be the information that tells him where safety is. A predictable lighthouse he would note and sail past. This one consumes him entirely. That lighthouse is the toxic person. The irregularity is not a flaw in the signal. For your nervous system, it is the signal. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk spent decades studying a quiet kind of trauma, households where love was real, but inconsistent. Warm sometimes, distant others. No pattern. Children raised here do not develop a baseline of calm. They develop a baseline of alert. Love is not a constant. It must be monitored, earned, protected, they carry this nervous system into adulthood. And when they finally meet someone consistent, safe, and present, the body does not feel relief. It feels unfamiliar. And unfamiliar, to a nervous system raised in chaos, feels like danger. So when the unpredictable person returns, the nervous system relaxes. Not because the danger is gone, because the familiar has returned. When you go back, you are not failing. Shame and self-contempt activate your threat response. And a brain in threat mode cannot learn, cannot regulate, cannot choose differently. The way out is not cognitive. You cannot think your way out of a dopamine loop at the moment it activates. The real work happens in the body through therapy, somatic practice, nervous system regulation. Every calm and consistent relationship around you is data your nervous system is quietly filing. It updates slowly, imperceptibly, but it updates. The person you keep going back to is not special. What is singular is the pattern they run, the specific ratio of warmth to withdrawal that your nervous system responds to with total compulsive attention. A completely different person running the same pattern would have produced the same attachment, because you are not attached to a human being. You are attached to a reinforcement schedule. That is not who you are. That is what you were taught. And what is taught can be untaught. Somewhere available to you, not now, maybe not soon, but available, is a relationship that feels almost unbearably calm. No decoding. No waiting. Just someone consistently quietly there. Your nervous system might say, "This cannot be right. This is not how love is supposed to feel." The question worth carrying is this. What if your nervous system has been wrong about what love is supposed to feel like? What if the thing you called passion was anxiety? And what if the thing you called boring was actually peace? You know about the lever now. And that is the beginning of being able to choose something different.